Hello, Team Absolution fans, far and wide, and happy Sunday. I hope you guys are doing incredible. Last night was another Vanguard tournament, and, well, I guess I'll break it all down for you. I played PBD. That's the short end of it. Last 2 weeks ago, I played Orphist in our locals. Our locals has grown to be astronomical over here in Game Theory in Raleigh. So shout out to Game Theory in Raleigh. But our locals have been growing very much over the last pretty much since they've reopened. We had 35 players crossing all the gambit. So a pretty decently sized local, probably the size of what small ARGs used to be. 2 weeks ago, I played Orphist. You saw if you follow us on Team Absolution Facebook, you've probably seen that. And I took the whole thing as a response. Somebody asked me in the Discord, what deck are you gonna play next? I jokingly said PBD. A fan of the channel and a good friend of ours, Franz, he responded with, "If you play PBD, I'll play Eugene." I, not being one to back down from a challenge, said, "Let's go." So this is the story of what it was like to play PBD in a tournament setting. And if you're thinking about picking up PBD and playing PBD, please do not let it be your primary deck. I implore on you, do not. If you want a list, I can get you a list. I'll add it to the description afterwards. I borrowed a friend's deck, one of the other tournament that were the Ralph, the tournament community manager. I guess is the best term. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I think that's right. He the TL, the tournament organizer. I think that's it. Anywho. He let me borrow his deck. I checked it. It's pretty much the standard build for what you would want to play if you wanted to play PBD. It runs the tech from Hexa Orb, the grade 2, that can check the top, put it on the top or bottom. Also, it is running the what's the card I'm thinking of? It is also runs the generic Overtrigger instead of the Keter Sanctuary one. You could toss back that the other one's a better option. I would say that in the turns that it did come into play, I'm actually really glad that offensively I had that 200 million because it won me a few games. So let's break down the night, and then I'll round about what I thought about the deck. So let's go into the first 35 players. We had 4 rounds. You can see the entire gambit of what's being played. And, yeah, I'm over here in that 5.7 percentage. So you got to give me a little bit of... Nah, I'm kidding. So I went 3-1 by the end of the night. Round 1, I went into prison. And the player did really well. It was a back-and-forth game. I over-triggered him on both games, so I won. That was more of an over-trigger experience. Less so anything to say about prison or PBD, though I did begin to feel even in game 1, even with the overtrigger, that the deck is a little forced. The grade 2, it is everything. By the end of the night, I just felt that I was doing so much to get so little. There was so much overextending to get what I needed to get done. Whereas a deck like Orphist or Bastion or Bruce or Prison even does not, heck, even, we'll get there, but even Eugene, I felt, got to what it was trying to do with less effort than PBD did. Everything PBD did, I felt like I was overextending and pushing myself just to get this critical, just to get to what my deck is supposed to do. So I take round 1. Round 2, I'm having some stomach issues at this point, so I have to give the first round to the opponent. Then I come back and I lose. It was against Bruce. I fully expected it anyways. He did drop the Leonard. Yeah, I did play it pretty close. The game was closer than I thought it'd be, but it just wasn't in the cards. It was definitely a fun match. Playing against Bruce with PBD is like that one ninja running towards Uchiha Madera, and then Madera just runs and just completely just curb stomps him and is done. Like, that was how you felt. Round 3. So round 3, I play up against a Bastion player, and the Bastion player also really good. I hit the overtrigger, I think, at one of the points of the game. I cannot remember which one. He also hit the overtrigger in game 1. However, he hit it on turn 1, I believe, where it's basically useless. He gets a free draw, he gets the 100 million, nothing else sticks with the Keter and Bastion. Things I learned from that's where it really started to settle in, because that was a lot of back and forth, and there were some misplays on the Bastion's player side that I truly believe would have won him the game. There was one instance where I think he was playing a little too fast, and the speed in which he was playing resulted in him checking a critical when I no-guarded the Vanguard and not putting the crit on the Vanguard and the power outside. He said all effects to the rear. In a tournament setting, I would have totally just said fine. This time I asked him, like, hey, are you sure that you want to put everything on your rear guard? And he said yes. I said fine. And then I took the damage, and then that's when it registered to him, oh man, I meant, he's like, oh, my bad. And I was just like, hey, and I expected him, if he had asked, I probably would have let him take it back, and because I mean, it's locals. At the same time, it's locals. But he was like, no, I'm going to let it rock. So I'm like, okay, let's go. You can probably still, I mean, it's still Bastion, okay? It's still Bastion. You're still going to be able to win this game. And so those events happened. So I feel like the Bastion game, it really started to settle in the weaknesses of PBD. It's just, it's slow, and it uses way too many resources to get what it's trying to do. Even from the jump, even turns where I thought, man, this would be really good, isn't. Because on the ride to Blaster Dark, if you top deck a Matcha, you're like, oh, I'm going to use this Matcha. But you don't have other dudes. Unless you call another dude on grade 1, which why would you do that unless you're going to swing with it, and then your opponent can just kill it next turn. So you have to set something back in the case you might get a Matcha off the top. And if you get a Matcha, you can Soul Blast, retire the other dude, check top 5 for a grade 1. But then you also have to retire something for the Blaster Dark if you want the skill. So you're really losing a lot to get the 10k in a crit is not bad by no stretch, but Barrow Mages gets that for playing the deck the way it's supposed to be played. You play you play PBD the way it's supposed to be played, and you just feel like you're constantly up. You're climbing this mountain, and you just never feel like you're gonna get to the other end of it. And even when you win games, you're like, how did this happen? Like, it was clearly the crit that did them in, or it was against the Bastion player, he just didn't have the guard, because sometimes Bastion just gives you all the grade 3s with nothing to guard with. Nature of the beast. So that was round 3. That's where it started to settle in that, man, this is rough. This is rough, and I'm glad that this isn't a main deck that I play. I'm glad that I didn't spend a ton of money on a deck like this or blinged it out. If you love Shadow Paladins, and if you love Phantom Blaster Dragon, by all means play this deck. Just know that as far as the matchups, you are going to be constantly playing behind in a lot of situations because of the way the deck operates. Round 4 is when it all finally just hit me. I go into the Eugene player, Franz, who I made the agreement with. We're both 3-1. He had lost against, I forget. I think he had lost against an Overlord player. And I lost against the Bruce, which he was also, hilariously enough, the person I played the final round in the tournament that I won with Orphist, except at that point I was playing Orphist and he was playing Bruce. So this time I'm playing, of course, PBD, and he's playing Eugene. And this is because this is a retire slugfest, right? Because I'm sacking 3 dudes. Most of the time I'm getting the Witch, so I'm only sacking 2 dudes. Occasionally I'm sacking 3 dudes. I'm sacking 2 dudes, I'm burning 2 of his dudes, and I'm going for face. I'm sacking the Witch and something else, doom. I'm sacking 3, killing 2, but then on his turn, he's, resting 2, killing something, doing something, killing another thing, using the Soul Blast 5, checking the top 5, calling stuff, putting the soul, and we're on this constant back and forth. Game 1, he resolves a billion of his triggers. I think by the end of the game, most of them had been checked. Most of them had been shown, at least. And he had checked at least 4 or 5 crits along the way. Puts me to sleep. Dunzo. Game 2, it's a back and forth. And I'm constantly feeling behind, but I'm still staying in the game. He's probably feeling the same way, because Eugene isn't that much better, right? Because I end up winning this round. So Eugene isn't that much better, but he... I forget what happened, but he didn't really settle in on what he needed to, and I take it. Now, game 3 is where things get hilarious, right? Because we're tired at this point, right? We've been playing Vanguard for about 4 hours. We're playing decks that we really haven't had as much of experience with, so we're dealing with a lot of situations on the fly, which is typically well, in a local situation, that's what you want to do, right? You learn the deck with your friends. That's been always my advice to players. You pick up a deck, you read the cards, you play a few rounds with your friends. Once you're a little more comfortable with it, then you take it to your locals, master your play lines, what the deck's supposed to do, get into interesting situations that you wouldn't get with your friends because different players, and you know the player if they're their friend. You go into a locals, especially when your locals 35, you're going to run into a lot of different scenarios with a lot of different players who react a lot differently to what you do. So you get to learn a lot and get a lot of experience. Once you get that kind of level of experience with the deck, then I would say you are prepared to go to another level of tournament. Now, our logo just happens to be 35 people. So in that situation, you do want to kind of know your deck pretty well, but at the same time, it is a very friendly environment. I love our community. So we get to really play these decks, these meme-like decks. So these meme-like decks. You have to ask yourself though, would I play it again? Nah, I'm not playing PvD again. I'll play Prison. I'll play Orphist. I'll take Braxton's Overlord and try that out for a spin. Because we got a lot of time between now and Lyrical. At least 2 more tournaments between now and Lyrical. So it's gonna be cool to experiment around with a lot of stuff. So game 3 with Eugene. We're in a constant back and forth. He's resolving a lot of triggers. I'm resolving a lot of triggers. His deck gets, because he's checking top 5. He's soul blasting, checking top 5, doing his roundabout thing with Eugene. He eventually gets to a point where he has 3 cards last in deck with his swing. I check all public zones and I realize that he has 3 triggers that I haven't seen. One of which is the over trigger. I realized that if the over trigger is in the deck, he loses because he'll reveal the over trigger, draw the last card in his deck. So long as he checks those 2 first, as long as one of those first 2 cards is the over trigger, I win because once he draws his last card, it's an instant loss. So he swings. I have enough to guard some attacks, but not enough if he checks a trigger. So I say, let's just hope that it is what it is. And because he still has 2 cards in his hand, the over trigger could be there, another trigger could be there. So there's 5 unknown cards and 3 triggers. So we're going to have to let it rock. I guard for a 1 to pass. The 2 cards he checks are blanks. The over trigger was in his hand. Another trigger was in his hand. The crit was the bottom of his deck. Gets to my turn. I pass back to his turn. He draws his last card. He loses by deck out. An incredibly exhausting game because I was surviving by the skin of my teeth every round, just pushing to stay alive with the guard that I have. And I go 3-1. And that is as good as I thought I was. That is better than I ever thought I would do with PvD. I really expecting a complete stomp out and just a complete and utter annihilation. So is the deck playable? Yes, but it is an arduous battle out there. And I think there are a lot more decks you can have fun with and experiment with and have a good time. Not to say that, if you like PvD, like I said, play it, rock it. Maybe it'll do better for you. But looking back on the night as a whole, round 1 without the over triggers, who knows how that could have gone down. That one, it's kind of hard to see how that would have gone down. Round 2, I don't see me taking 2 games off of Bruce. I might have taken 1. But 2 games off of Bruce, unlikely. Round 3 against that Bastion player, he not make some of the misplays he made during the game, I think he would have beaten me as well. So we have one loss without a doubt. I don't think there's any way I could have beaten the Bruce player. The first one, it could have gone down differently without just if the luck angle had swiveled the other way. The Bastion player, that one he absolutely could have won without question. And the Eugene one, that one just came down to the way the game came down. So, and that seems like a really half-hearted statement because you're like, well, any game can come down that way. You're right. But when you're looking at a deck and you're looking at that, and you're saying, man, all these games really could have gone done the other way. And you played 3 different decks. It wasn't like I played Bruce, and I won one because of triggers, and I lost one because I was going to lose it, and I won the other one because of misplays. And I can be like, well, PvD's pretty good. I played against this, and it did fine. No, I played against 4 different decks, and in each situation, I felt like those games were losable, and there were times I should have lost those games. And that's kind of where it all ends up. So I wanted to do this video because a lot of people want insight onto how it is to play the decks, and especially now a lot of people don't have giant communities or bigger communities, which I think awesome. If you can get into your locals and build that community, it's worth it. It's a great testing ground, and I've really enjoyed playing with such a large group amount of people. And it's a great experience to see how decks do with a various amount of metas and how they react to it. So to end this video, I'll bring you how did the tournament end, right? I went 3-1. I got 11th place. So what? We put away, I gave PBD back. I said, that book is closed. I have a version of PBD. It's just a much more budget build PBD because I don't want to take apart my Bastion build. So first place was a guy named Jacob, and he played Overlord. So I'm just going to post these pictures real quick in case any of you guys want to see what's going on. Shout out to Jacob for getting first place. Second place was Amber. Amber, check out this list. It looks great. Awesome. Nice shiny Zorga build. Enjoy this. Third place was Overlord again. Wait, was this Overlord? Where's the rest of the grade 3s? I want to see one grade. There they are. Okay, yeah. So we got Overlord. Enjoy. Fourth place, we have Prison. Enjoy. I'll let you pause if you'd like to. So first, second. So we had 2 Overlord players in top 4. A Zorga player, and as well a Prison player. Brings us to this nice breakdown that we're going to get to from Ralph is the deck representation by nation, by nation, and by deck. So we had 2 PvD players. I was one of them. We had about 5 Hex Orb and 1 Bastion. About 2 Bear Magus, 5 Bruce, 4 Snow, 3 Orphist, 4 Overlord, 2 of which got 50% of those. 2 Eugene, 1 of those Franz, 1 Nirvana, 2 Nirvana, 3 Magnolia, 2 Zorga. So that's just the general outlook of what our locals looked like this last week, yesterday, and we'll see what it looks like 2 weeks from now when this meta is kind of the same. Are people going to keep playing what they're playing? My prediction is that people are going to get bored with what they're going to playing, and they're just going to experiment with everything on the table up until Lyrical comes out in October. But is this kind of, let me know if this is what you guys think about PBD, about any of these other decks in the format right now. Drop it in the comments. What deck do you want to play in locals next? I have access to, I'm sure I can ask anyone in my community for any of these decks and give it a whirl in locals and try my best to give you guys a true to heart report of what it's like to play in a diverse meta with any of these decks and how it feels. Please subscribe to Team Absolution. Please check us out tonight in roughly about 1 hour after this video goes up. I will be trying out Scarlet Nexus over on twitch.tv/Captain Absolution. I can't wait to see some of you guys there as I play weekend Sunday RPG night. And aside from that, have a great day. And I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.